What is going on with Deion Sanders and Colorado football? I'll tell you what, it's spring ball.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borwood. Today's episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So thank you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen of the day while we talk all things Buffs. We're talking about the first day of Colorado spring practice, and there's a lot of things that I noticed in the interviews and sort of what I've seen in sort of back channels and social media discussions, if you will. So let's dive in. I think the most important part of everything I'm going to say is the fact that Cormani McClain, his status was revealed, and it is a good sign for Colorado fans. If you guys don't remember, I think last week I was told, and this wasn't me wishing it upon anyone, it was just this is what I was told. Cormani McClain was reportedly, or at least what my sources told me, there was some noise surrounding Cormani McClain going to the transfer portal. There was rumors saying, oh, he's in Tallahassee right now, taking a visit to Florida State. Well, whatever it may be, those appear to be false because he is in Boulder. And so that's a good sign for Buffs fans. Another thing, there was multiple coaches that talked today. It was Coach Phillips, Coach Lodeholt, and Coach Dancy, and then two players, which ended up being Preston Hodge, the Liberty defensive back transfer, and then LeJonte Wester, the FAU Florida Atlantic wide receiver transfer. So there was some things that stood out to me. So I'm just going to go over what I thought was interesting. I wanted to get the Cormani McClain stuff out of the way just because until I hear more, I'm just going to say what I was told was a rumor, or was not a rumor, but what I was told was what people were hearing. It wasn't set in stone. I think a lot of people took it as me saying it's going to happen. Nope, that's just what I was told. I was told there's a possibility. So let's talk about the on-field stuff that we learned about, or off-field stuff that we learned about today. Coach Lodeholt, the new offensive line coach who is tasked with rebuilding what was one of the worst, if not the worst, offensive line in all of college football. And so he comes in and he talks about just kind of what he's trying to do in Boulder. So he said he's super fired up to be here. He's excited to be back home. He's excited to work with Coach Prime, and he's excited to build what he said was an elite unit. And I like the enthusiasm. I like the effort level already. I like all the talent they brought in. They brought in 5 quality starters. They brought in a 5-star offensive tackle who could be the cornerstone of this offense line for years to come. So that's huge. And he talked about Jordan Steen a little bit and said he's a student of the game that works hard. And he's been impressive, but his mental aspect of the game has been the most impressive. And then he talked about wanting to make Colorado offensive line U. And you're probably like, what does that mean? Well, there's this thing in college football. I don't know when it started, but probably a few years ago now. I don't know if it's always been a thing. At least I don't remember it always being a thing. But what position, like quarterback U, would be like Oklahoma, because they produced Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, technically, and Caleb Williams in a way-ish. Or running back U would be Alabama. They have Mark Ingram, Derrick Henry, Eddie Lacy, Trent Richardson, like all these guys. So it's like, who is offensive line U? Well, right now it's probably Iowa or one of those Big Ten schools, or Michigan has pumped out some really good offensive linemen as of late. But Coach Lodeholt, wants to make Colorado offensive line U. And he said by doing so, in order to do so, he wants to keep local kids in Colorado. He said, that's the goal. We want to recruit the top talent and hopefully keep the good guys and stay here. We've got some good guys at other places now. And he said it was a priority for him to keep those guys in state, which is interesting because if you guys remember last season, what I've kind of been talking about this entire offseason is I think Coach Prime needs to put more of an emphasis on recruiting. And I think he has, I know he has a certain preference of where the players are from. He wants guys from Florida. He wants guys from Texas. He wants guys from Georgia. And that's not shocking. Everyone wants guys from Florida, Texas, and Georgia. That's where the talent, that's where the hotbeds are, if you will. You go down to South Florida, and there's probably 300 dudes that could run a 4.4 40 right now. You go down to Texas, and there's probably 50 offensive linemen that are 6'5", 300 plus right now. Like those guys, those states breed football dogs. And Coach Prime wants some dogs on his roster, as we know. And so for Coach Lodeholt to kind of say, we want to keep the local kids here, I think it shows the importance of recruiting is kind of changing. I think there's some really interesting, maybe philosophy changings coming. That's something to look out for, in my opinion, just because obviously we haven't heard much about Colorado recruiting the high school level. Also, Coach Phillips talked about LeJontay Wester. I think a lot of people are excited about LeJontay Wester. I think most people in and around the program are kind of the mindset that LeJontay Wester may be stealing. Like it's not that we're not going to see Jimmy Horn Jr. anymore, but LeJontay Wester may be the more polished player. And I think that's going to be a hell of a battle to look out for. And so Coach Phillips, when he was talking about him, he said he's extremely quick, extremely knowledgeable, a veteran. He has explosiveness, and it says it's no secret why he's here. What he did last year obviously was fantastic. That's me paraphrasing, but that's what he said. And then he also talked about Omarion Miller and said he's starting to fall in love with Omarion Miller. Interesting. If you guys don't remember, it was Omarion Miller versus USC was like a prime Calvin Johnson. Like he went from not playing in the first few games. I think he had seen a couple snaps in a couple games prior, but he was not in a significant role at all. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh gosh, Shedeur is just targeting this guy. They were feeding this guy. They were force feeding Omarion Miller. He was making great catches, diving catches, contested catches. He was making plays after the catch. And then he just disappeared. We never saw him again. So Omarion Miller is clearly making a lasting impression. He's building off of the confidence, off the success he had last year. The Travis Hunter debacle, it's not really a debacle. I think it's a debacle. Travis Hunter worked with the defense today, so that means he'll work with the offense next practice, which is going to be Wednesday. Obviously, I think they should split, or I think Travis should focus on one position more than the other. I think realistically, this is me just talking about NFL potential and stuff. I think Travis is a projected first-round pick at either position. I think receivers make more money. I think Travis could be a better receiver than a corner if he focused strictly on receiver. And obviously, he'd have a longer career. So that'd just be my take on it. At Colorado, I think they need to maximize how they use him. I think they need to give him a rest every once in a while. I think they kind of went straight pedal to the metal, and it was like, oh, damn, okay, relax. Like, we get it. He's one of the best players in college football. When Coach Phillips was talking about Pat Shurmur's offense, because I feel like that was kind of an interesting subject, he said it's interesting and that we took a lot of things from last season and we're getting that into his philosophy. So basically, from what I'm hearing, the offense is, I won't say a work in progress, but the offense is kind of like we are learning how to redo things, because obviously you have familiarity in the sense that Pat Shurmur called plays last year, but he's now calling his offense. So there might be some verbiage change, and he also has to kind of integrate a run game because that was not possible last year. Now to the players, some things that stood out to me was Preston Hodge just being a dog. He was asked if he wanted to play nickel or corner, and he said he does not care. He says they're the same to him. He did like nickel a little more because he likes to be physical. He likes to get down in the box. And I just love the grittiness, because Colorado, I think they had, and I don't know how to say, I don't want to say they had pretend grittiness. Like they were like I think they had guys that were mentally like ready for that contact. But when it came time to deliver those hits, didn't always work out. I think Preston Hodge is kind of showing us that like he's ready to get to work. He's ready to, if you can't see me right now, I'm just like popping the collar. Just, he's ready. He's putting on his work boots, putting on his Carhartt gloves. He is ready to work. And I like that. I like that for the defense. He was asked about Coach Livingston's defense, and he said they're going to play a lot of man defense, which is something that they do a lot in the NFL, obviously, which I think obviously Coach Livingston's influence from the NFL helps out there. That was one of the reasons that Hodge came to the NFL, because he wanted someone who had NFL caliber experience. And then when he was asked which player that he's gone up against the most has impressed him, he said Omarion Miller. Maybe we're about to witness an Omarion Miller breakout year. Maybe there's a transfer like a Will Shepherd or LeJontay Wester, or someone who may not be starting. I know LeJontay is a slot guy, but maybe Omarion Miller is going to make things a little more difficult in that wide receiver battle. And then he said Wester for the slot. Then LeJontay Wester, when he went up there, just highlighted how great Shedeur was as a quarterback. He says he's a pro, helped him improve his game. And he said that they're going to put up a lot of points this year. And I think there's a lot to be excited about. Realistically, this Colorado team, even though a lot of these guys in some, well, not really. I don't know. It's like this. It's weird because there's not as many new players as there were last year, but it still feels like a brand new team. Because I would say it's going to be a whole new offensive line. Realistically, a receiver, it could be a new receiver core. Running backs are the same, but none of these guys really, like Dylan Edwards played a lot, but like Alton McCaskill, he's probably going to be the starter, and he didn't play a lot last year. So it feels like a new team almost. And it's interesting, new coaching staff as well. It's interesting to see the mindset. I think that this team is going to come out of spring ball with in much better position than they did last year. I think spring ball last year was a disaster, realistically, mostly because they didn't have the roster they needed. I went to that spring game and it was crazy because I'm going through the interview processes. I'm talking to Sean Lewis, and it's like, okay, like cool, like everyone's working together and all this, and then you hear Coach Prime say, yeah, this is probably not our roster. So it's like, okay, so I would assume that most of these guys that I'm watching play are not a part of this team. And then sure enough, they lost a handful of offensive linemen, they lost some receivers, and it was just like, oh, I think heading into this spring game, they're going to be in a much better position because there's going to be more continuity. I think the hardest part now is just figuring out who's going to be the starters. So I will keep you guys updated. I will have a guest on for those. My intern, Griffin, he's attending the practices, and we're going to be talking everything he notices. I'll talk to Scott. He's out there. We're going to get all the latest buzz, and you guys won't want to miss it. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Colorado's latest transfer edition because they're still putting in work in that portal. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Nissan. This week's March Madness Bracket Highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest, just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These guys were able to take it to the next level. The Oregon Ducks were obviously this week's Nissan Rogue. The team absolutely surprised us all with a powerful performance in the final Pac-12 tournament, punching their ticket to the big dance. They say win life, go Rogue, and that's exactly what the Ducks have done here. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys from tuning in, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. I want to thank you guys for all your support. I have a little update for you guys. We have hit the 5,000 subscriber mark. I greatly appreciate it. We're actually at 5,006 now, so we've jumped it a little bit. I appreciate all the support that you guys give me. It has been a fun adventure, and let's keep it going. Let's get to 6,000. Let's get to 10,000. But first, before we do that, we got to talk about Colorado's latest transfer portal edition, and I like it because I think it's a low risk, high reward type of edition. And you're probably like, what does that even mean? How can it be both? Well, they went out and landed a former he's a Colorado native from Aurora. His name's Sam Hart, plays tight end. He was a 4-star recruit and was ranked as the third best prospect in Colorado in the 2021 class. He obviously got some good size, 6'5", 255. Went to Ohio State and only played in 5 games in 2022. Didn't play in 2021, 2023. So low risk, high reward situation right here. Worst case scenario, you get a special teams contributor. Best case scenario, you get a second tight end that kind of matches up or can be Chairman Montier's running mate. In high school at Cherokee Trail, he caught 51 passes for 800 yards, 7 touchdowns during his last 2 seasons, Also played defensive end. He was a wrestling class at 5A state champion at 220 pounds as a junior, and then finished runner-up in 2019. He went 77-7 in those 2 years. It was 38-0 as a junior. He didn't wrestle as a senior because he went to Ohio State early. Obviously, he's a physical guy. He's a big guy. But more importantly, he gives this Colorado tight end room some depth and some experience depth, if you will. Even though he doesn't have any catches, even though he doesn't have stats, he's been playing in one of the best programs in college football. He has been training with some of the best athletes in college football. Ohio State has a good tight end. They always do. And so for him not to be on the field, it's not shocking because it's hard to get on the field at Ohio State. But he's someone who comes into a tight end room at Colorado where it's Mateer, who I think is going to be a breakout star for Colorado. I think Shedeur Sanders is going to rely on him a lot underneath, just because I feel like guys are going to want to prevent Shedeur from going deep. They're going to want to put some extra cushion over LeJontay. They're going to want to put some extra cushion over Jimmy Horn Jr. So these guys are going to make it difficult for Shedeur to go deep. They're going to try to make him take what he's given, and he will. And what he's given will be Chaman Mateer. And it's going to be, I think, a breakout year for Chaman Mateer. But when you look at who's behind him, they had to move 2 defensive players to tight end. It was Morgan Pearson and Savell Smalls. Now, Savell Smalls is a former 5-star recruit that just really hasn't panned out. And unfortunately for him, it's just one of those things where he didn't find his role at Washington. He just couldn't carve out a niche for himself. Then he comes to Colorado, and former 5-star guy that many people were kind of hoping would take that next step. And he just never could. And so it's one of those things where he has potential. He played some tight end in high school, but I like the addition of Sam Hart. He's a blocking tight end. If Colorado wants to get big now, they could go with a 2 tight end set. They could get crazy, go with a 3 tight end set. They could have Savell Smalls blocking. They could have Chaman Mateer blocking. They could have Sam Hart all on the field at once for the run game. I think it's one of those things where Coach Prime and Brett, the tight ends coach, Brett Bartolone, who former wide receiver coach, they just look at the room and they're like, we need more depth. And this guy comes from a big program, which I'm not saying because he played at Ohio State, he's going to be great, but he has experience in a high caliber offense. He's from a winning culture. So he's a good culture guy. And he's a hungry guy. He wants to play. He wants to make an impact. And so Colorado gives him the chance to make an impact on the field, and he could be an impact by being a leader. And I think that's what Colorado needs this next year is they need more guys to step up as leaders when things get difficult, because things may get difficult. That's how it kind of works realistically in college football. And so I just wanted to kind of put that out there. And sorry, I had a little delay because that's how things work. That's how things. But yeah, I like it. I like the addition. I like where their heads are at. When I come back, I'm going to be talking about where I think he fits into the offense, though, what I think he does to this offense. But first, a word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV, whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament. You're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports events, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date and all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, and MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To visit more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen of the day, free and available wherever you get your podcast. We're talking about what Sam Hart does to this offense, because I think this offense was very one-dimensional last season. I think there was no ability to mix things up. They had to throw the ball out of the shotgun. Shedeur Sanders could not be under center because he would get mauled. Shedeur Sanders they couldn't run any RPO stuff because by the time Shedeur pulled the ball, he was getting mauled. Now, and they didn't have a blocking tight end. So I know a lot of the adjustments that I was calling for were to have someone else to block, whether it was a running back or a tight end. They just couldn't do it. Mikey Harrison is a converted receiver that just was not able to block. And so it was a lot of pressure on him. Now they bring in Mateer from Cincinnati. It's like he could block and make plays. If they want to plug in Sam Hart, it kind of opens up new formations. And by opening up new formations, it opens up new looks. You could run certain play action pass looks. You can run certain run game things because you could overload one side and maybe go to the other, or you could just go behind the big bodies. And so Sam Hart brings a physicality, he brings a toughness, and he brings the desire that this Colorado team needs. And so I think he'll probably slot into that tight end 2 spot ahead of Smalls and Pearson. I just think that, and I mean, if he doesn't, then it's one of those things where it's a tough look, I guess. But I think he has more potential as a tight end 2 than those other guys do. Now, I'm not going to say that Savell Smalls and Pearson aren't going to make plays, but it's one of those things where I think this helps out Colorado much, much more. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Colorado because they are in the NCAA tournament. We're going to talk about their path to the title game and who is standing in their way. But first, a word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have time or resources to hire. They're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write the job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses are using LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Sorry about that brief little intermission there. Had a little discrepancy with what I had to do. We're talking about Colorado men's basketball, and guess what? They're in the first four, so they kind of have to buy their way in. They're a 10 seed, battling out for a 10 seed against Colorado or against Boise State, excuse me. And they are the favorites, kind of. It is pretty close. Boise State is 22-10. They had a very, very good season this past year. They finished third in the Mountain West at 13-5. And then obviously New Mexico was the one who won, was the team who won the Mountain West. This Boise State team, they come in with some pretty big wins on their resume. They played Virginia Tech closely earlier in the year. They beat VCU, who's a really solid team. Who else? They played Washington State pretty close, even though they lost. But they handled business when they needed to. They upset number 17 Colorado State. They beat San Diego State one time. They beat Fresno State. They played Utah State close into overtime. They beat number 19 New Mexico. So they're a quality team. I think that this Colorado team should absolutely bully them in the paint. Realistically, it's hard to keep up with Big Eddie, Big Eddie Lampkin. They don't have a lot of size, this Boise State team. They have two forwards that are 6'8", which I feel like is a little bit undersized when you consider what Colorado's bringing to the table. But the Buffs are favored by 2.5. Their game's on Wednesday, and it's one of those things where if you're Colorado, you look at because Colorado made it to the Pac-12 final. They had a late push to end that game, but Oregon ultimately ended up winning, and Oregon just kind of felt like that team of destiny once you look at it. But they were cold. They were cold AF. They were 7 of 22 from three, and from the field, they were 20 of 48. Tristan Da Silva only had 9 points. Eddie Lampkin only had 7. KJ Simpson had 23, and he was kind of carrying the load for them. And so they need a big game to kind of get them back in the right mindset. I think while you don't want to be one of the first four in the sense that you have to play an extra game and you want to just be in, I think it gives them a chance to build momentum. It gives them a chance to be like, okay, we won one game, and now we can do this. And so let's pull up the bracket to see who they play against, because it is a heated South region for Colorado. Realistically, I don't think that this region is going to be it wasn't an easy draw by any means, but when you look at who they have possibly ahead of them if they win, sorry, I'm trying to pull it up. And so in their bracket, they have Houston. They have, I don't know why it started playing music. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I'm trying to pull up the bracket and it's playing music. But they're in Houston's bracket, which is a tough bracket or a tough region. It's just one of those things where you don't want to play against Houston just because obviously they are kind of the favorites to win it all. But if you knock them down or if you knock them out, it obviously builds your confidence a ton. So who else is in the Southern region? If they win, they'll play the winner of Marquette and Western Kentucky. Marquette's a good team. Florida's in their region, Kentucky's in their region, Texas Tech, North Carolina State, who went on a crazy run to win the ACC, Duke, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and Texas A&M. So it's a tough region. I think if Colorado wins 2 or 3 games, that's a success. I think making it to the Elite Eight or making it to the Sweet 16 would be a huge accomplishment for them. I won't even lie, just because of how loaded this region is. But they need to get hot. They need to shoot better. They need to just take advantage of mismatches. So in their first game, they're bigger. So attack the paint. Playing against Marquette and whoever comes after that, you need kind of like a mixture. So I'll keep you guys updated. I'll have some NCAA March Madness guys on here. We'll talk all things Colorado hoops. You guys comment below what your favorite or biggest spring ball question is for football, and I will look to address that. I hope you guys enjoy, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow. Have a great start to your week. Thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs.